Deborah's mother found it difficult to believe that she became pregnant prior to her favorite daughter, so she gave her former partner what he exposed caused her to repent. All she named her Kate, which was strange, mainly because the majority of children called their mother's mother. But Kate insisted on that the half-sister of Rose Deborah, and she never spoke to her in that manner in Kate's mind. Mom seemed like a catchphrase for she had never been with someone older, capable of seeing herself, as she had repeatedly expressed to them how she felt too young to be referred to as a mother, as though she might feel burdened by the term. Thus, it was always just Kate, as they were friends or neighbors, instead of her. Kate was a high school student when Deborah was born to her. She wasn't interested in getting pregnant. Nelson's biological father, had intended, in fact, that Kate consistently described as an accident was a word that was very important to Deborah over time, whether they knew it or not. Nelson and Kate were sweethearts from high school, but they were youthful, careless, and considering repercussions when they found themselves in this circumstances. When Nelson discovered Kate he made it apparent that he wasn't pregnant. He is eager to be her partner, promised to be present, and pay child support for the infant. But it was there that his participation ended. He wasn't going to playhouse or carry on with their connection. But Kate was shattered by it. Though she didn't always acknowledge it, she had expectations, despite their lack of awareness of relationship, could resemble, and perhaps she thought that having a tiny portion, having a baby will intensify the situation between them. But Nelson failed to notice particular manner, given the fact that when Deborah was born, it broke her. Nelson and Kate's relationship didn't becoming better. If anything, Kate was unable to let go of the grudge she held in his direction, and it was always evident. Nelson would come to pick him up when he came around. Deborah is available for visits or simply stops by to spend time with her. However, rather than Kate is almost always able to keep things cordial, picked a quarrel with him, appearing to seek out arguments even when there was nothing for her to argue about. Occasionally struck out against him over little small things at times and larger ones at others. Her rage was the main source of her problems, that he was not interested in dating her. Deborah wasn't old enough to comprehend what was actually taking place. Therefore, she didn't, when Kate speaks poorly, ask her questions. Regarding Nelson, Kate would utter phrases like, "He doesn't care enough about you to get married," "me," or "fathers should take care of their family as well as your fathers, just a deadbeat." Deborah, as a child, lacked the ability to comprehend what Kate was sincere when she said, but as she grew older, she began to notice in a different way. She started to understand that Kate made Nelson into a villain, although he wasn't turned out to be the exact reverse of what he was. Reliable. He paid her a visit always on time for the weekend, and he is constantly excited to spend time with her, never neglected to pay child support, and it was evident to her that he truly loved. She sensed that he was with her, despite the fact that he and Kate didn't have a positive bond as Deborah developed. The better she realized that Nelson was making every effort to be despite the situation. He is a good father, wasn't flawless, but he most definitely wasn't. Kate said that the deadbeat guy it was important that they were there for her. Most when Kate was 6 years old and Deborah encountered David, the guy she would later marry, and are now referred to as her love. It was fantastic to witness Kate with his realization of her potential differences. David was a pleasant, easygoing, and he took Deborah in from the start, without hesitation, as a component of his existence. She had always been his property, daughter, which was very important to her. Surprising given how intricate her and Kate's connection had always. Being David was never an issue for him. Calm and compassionate, and he tried to be there for her, like Kate frequently does. Didn't shortly after their marriage. This time, Kate became pregnant once more, alongside Rose, Deborah's half-sister. When Rose Deborah was ecstatic when she was born, and loved her from the beginning, and over the years, they had become very close, and she would do this with her best friend, anything for her, but only to the extent that she loved Rose. That much was clear. The way Kate handled the two of them was excruciatingly unfair since Rose's birth. It has been clear that Kate's favorite Kate shower was her. In a sense, Rose with love and care, Deborah had never encountered Kate lit up as she saw them together, surrounding her, purchasing her lovely small outfits that go together, shoes to ensure she had all the toys, or what she really wanted was a rose, and still was Kate's favorite thing. Deborah, meanwhile, felt like an after-all. Kate seemed almost aloof, chilly with her. She rarely spending time with her, and upon doing so, there was persistent undercurrent of anxiety, as though Deborah was bothered by her very existence. She was obviously envious. How could it be? Deborah did not witness her sister get all the affection and care she had yearned for from Kate, and it was painful since she didn't make an effort to gain Kate's love. She did, however, receive her requests for items, whether it was as basic as a brand new, usually a clothing or a toy she enjoyed, occasionally disregarded or dismissed. Instead of receiving a fresh item, Kate would provide her cousin's antiques and inform her that she didn't require anything new in any case, and she should quit squandering money that isn't needed. It was difficult to express how much that favoritism could be hurtful, but it wasn't just about the tangible items that were. Kate's emotional detachment kept all of her love and warmth to herself. Rose's decision to make Deborah feel like alienated within her own family, as well as, despite her deep affection for Rose, if she claimed it didn't, she would be lying. It pained to witness how her own mother treated her, like though Rose were the only one she child on Rose's birthday each year rolled around. It was a significant occasion commemorated in a lavish manner that demonstrated how much Kate loved her, and the gatherings were always adorned with ornaments, presents, and an ecstatic group of friends and family. There would be cake, balloons, and a whole Rose was the subject of a lot of fuss. Kate clearly put her all into what made those days unique was the kind of birthday that many children hoped for. In Deborah's birthdays, in comparison, always felt. She was never considered as an afterthought. Permitted to ask friends over for a party, not once every few years, the magnitude of celebration. Kate placed an order for a pizza, no cake, and that was it. Decorations, no thrills, simply a basic delivery of pizza, and the day would go by. Without much focus, she recalled how painful it was to behold the bleak distinction between Kate Sean and Rose's birthdays and the manner in which hers were hardly identifiable, as if one further indication that she wasn't as crucial, that she wasn't deserving of the same devotion or work as she grew older. He began explaining to Kate how it was unjust, and she made no effort to clarify oneself or correct the situation. Instead, Than responded coldly, snapping back, "Go," she would say, "cry to your dad about it," as though you had some responsibility for her treatment of Deborah. That's all she would say. It's his fault, shifting the responsibility onto him and away from herself, as though did favoritism play a role in. Kate used Deborah's father as a means of avoiding or refusing to accept. However, she was hurting her father. Always made an effort to compensate, but he was able to determine how many birthdays indicated to her how unique they ought to feel. And he was always the first to someone to give her a call and wish her well. At midnight on her birthday, he bought her presents and made an effort to make the day feel unique. Even though it wasn't identical to, he saw that they were enjoying a large party. Kate handled her differently and Rose, and it disturbed him. She recalled a few occasions when he attempted to speak with regarding it. Kate, he wasn't combative. All he wanted to know was why she couldn't give them both the same treatment, affection and concern. Yet those discussions never worked out well. Instead of listening, Kate snapped, and it swiftly changed. She instructed him to get into a yelling match. keep the thoughts he had to himself. No authority to discuss how she was raised, given that she was wed to Rose's father, not him. She clarified in the reality that David was Rose's. Her father authorized her to treat Rose as though Deborah's father were in her life, automatically disqualified her from getting the same amount of affection, or more painful than anything was, the attention. She felt as though she was being disciplined for something she wasn't even responsible for. When she left for college, it turned into made more obvious how minimal her presence truly mattered to Kate. If she was believed, Kate was glad to at last. She saw it when you had her out of the house. Kate's actions were like a burden, been raised off of Kate's shoulders, seldom phoned, and her visits were almost non-existent. The few occasions when Deborah heard from her, it seemed more like a duty on Kate's part. Instead, more than any sincere interest in learning how she and David Rose were doing. Dad worked much harder to stay, more in touch with her than Kate ever was. They checked in with her more frequently to check on her college adjustment, life, and ensured that she wasn't experiencing on its own. It was consoling but painful to observe how insignificant her own mother appeared. To be concerned about the absence of affection and caring from Kate hurt a lot, but she made an effort not to think about it too much. She continued to hope. Maybe, in time, whatever the problem is, Kate would diminish with her and her father away, and in time, they might have some. It was a fairly typical relationship. In her last year of university, that she got to know her ex-boyfriend, Ian, and Deborah suddenly grew serious, and their relationship for a while was fantastic. He helped her and made her feel like she's seen something she didn't usually encounters with her own relatives, particularly not from Kate. When Deborah completed college, it was significant for her. Her father, stepfather Rose, and Kate even joined her in celebrating, although, honestly, David had to persuade Kate. She was aware that Kate wouldn't have appeared if it weren't for his perseverance, even though it had some significance for of everyone present on such a significant. Kate and Ian initially met on that day. And Deborah was shocked to learn that she first appeared to be almost enthralled with him. She didn't give it much thought, but after Kate began saying strange things, such as her inability to accept someone Asian who was attractive was with someone like. When Kate initially stated it, Deborah ultimately attempted to dismiss it. She had become accustomed to Kate's casual comments that were more damaging than she most likely understood, or perhaps she did understand. Deborah wasn't certain either how she told herself it and let it go. It wasn't worth the effort to face her. Then Kate did it once more, and they were all having lunch together following the graduation ceremony, and immediately after in front of Ian and the family members. Kate said something similar again. Deborah was implied to be unattractive, enough to joke that and spend time with Ian. Perhaps this time she was his charity case. Not only was it cruel, but it was downright embarrassing, particularly considering Kate stated it before Ian. Deborah sensed a feeling of humiliation rose in her chest as she wasn't going to overlook it once more. So as she turned to Kate with as much composure as possible and informed her that her current state, it felt unsettling to discuss her and Ian, that she was more than her appearance. She desired for Kate to get how unsuitable and uneasy for her. Not only were remarks made for her, but also for everybody at the table looked at Ian, embarrassed. Even her father, who typically made an effort to avoid conflicts with Kate, was obviously irritated, so he gave her a few cautionary looks, most likely in the hopes she would understand and cease before Deborah could sense that things had gotten out of hand. Did not wish to cause a commotion in front of Ian, although he shared her level of distress. It wasn't merely a minor, careless comment. It served as yet another illustration of how Kate seemed to always find a way to put even in the midst of one of the biggest significant events in her life. Following that, on the day of their graduation, Kate and Ian became pals on Facebook, who took Deborah by Ian shocked her by telling her that Kate had sent a friend request to him and inquired as to if it wasn't acceptable for him to accept Deborah. Wished to exaggerate the situation, so she stated that he accepted her because it was up to him, merely to be courteous, as he understood that as well as she did, if Kate would have brought it up in front of the next time she saw him. Everyone, Deborah still thought it was strange that Kate, who had seldom given her any attention, life while attending college, wanted to remain in touch with her lover on social media. During the previous 3 years, during which Ian and Deborah dated, Kate kept a courteous but aloof relationship. She would check in with him, on him occasionally, departing sporadic remarks on his postings or sending quick messages on Facebook. Nothing really weird, but sense of familiarity persisted. Kate never gave Deborah anything between them. That sort of focus. But with Ian, she appeared more involved throughout. Ian brought up the relationship once, or he informed Deborah twice that Kate appeared to initially utterly envious of her. She dismissed it with a laugh. But Ian was serious, began highlighting all the small ways Kate's actions surrounding her gave the impression that, as though she were competing in some way with her, regardless of how she disregarded her and denigrated her achievements, or perhaps her peculiar obsession with her relationships. Deborah was surprised and envious of her. Never considered that she had always believed that Kate's actions were simply general animosity or unsolved problems with her father. But Ian insisted that he may observe it from the exterior. Kate would gently make fun of her for the way she seems to be rather disturbed by the notion of her contentment with someone or first successful in her career. Deborah rejected the notion that it was difficult to acknowledge that her own mother might experience something like to envy for her, but Ian continued to bring it up, and the more she began to observe the trends for herself, whether it was her appearance or connections, or even her accomplishments. Every time, Kate managed to make her feel smaller, and after giving it some thought, from the standpoint that perhaps Kate was envious of everything, began to make sense after that. Deborah grew extra cautious after realizing she found herself protecting Kate around her, her feelings more firmly, refusing to Kate. Is offended by Kate's remarks, as she was uncertain on what to do with the awareness that her own mother could be envious of her. But things changed for the better. The manner in which she engaged with her couldn't observe Kate's actions the similar to how it used to feel, but now coldness or disinterest now appeared more such as a perverted spirit of rivalry, and more than anything else that thought. Deborah emotionally distances herself from Kate to Ian, and Deborah even more ended their relationship after 3 years of dating. The split was rather cordial between them both. Understood that even if they loved one another, other people's lives were changing in several paths, and it was time they agreed to remain friends after parting ways, to stay in contact, but as frequently occurs. Deborah became busy because life got in the way with her personal life, and Ian followed suit. They soon lost contact entirely, and that period of her life in silence closed, and she met Justin 2 years ago, and all was altered. Justin was, and is still, all she could have ever wanted. Desired in a companion, he was considerate and gave her a sense of worth in manner that she had never encountered before. With he felt comfortable, and they had an honest conversation regarding their aspirations, future, and first of all, Deborah began to see a genuine route to the type of life. She desired a life that was full of love, steadiness, and ultimately a family. She was genuinely content with him, which was, she didn't take it for granted. Deborah discovered this year that it wasn't anything that she and Justin had immediately made plans, but it wasn't an unpleasant shock either. They had a lifelong desire to have children. Additionally, even if the timing was, unexpectedly, the thrill was genuine. Were ecstatic and started right away preparing for this next phase of their lives. The first action they took was to obtain married in a modest, private ceremony. Only family members and close friends rose of course. She was being held by her bridesmaid. On that day, having her at your side meant the world to her mother. Kate was present for the wedding. However, Deborah remained throughout the ceremony, could tell she didn't approve of her, didn't quite understand why she looked dissatisfied with something regarding she was troubled by the entire incident later when they having some alone time. Kate at last allowed her to. She told Deborah that her sentiments were leaking out. Quite plainly, she never desired her to wed someone similar to Justin. In her imagination, Deborah was making a mistake, in her opinion, by spending time with him before Kate continued to express that she had sincerely hoped Deborah intended to reconcile with her. Deborah, her ex-boyfriend, was unable to assist, but chuckle when she said it since it was so a ridiculous and out-of-touch suggestion. Given her current circumstances, she believed that Kate might have had too much to have alcohol during the wedding and was simply talking gibberish about Kate being when she moved. She was still obsessed with her ex and discovered contentment with Justin was. Deborah tried to ignore it, but it was almost hilarious. Her remarks, as she had become adept at over time, but in the back of mind it did frustrate her. Even on one of her wedding was the happiest day of her life. Kate was unable to simply be pleased for her that day. Rather, Kate had managed to condemn her and give her the impression that she wasn't meeting her standards. But Deborah had other obligations this time. Concentrate on the fact that Justin was by her side, baby on the way, and she finally made the decision to should concentrate on the happiness and love in her life. Instead of Kate's pessimism following Deborah and Justin made the decision to wait till it was finished before revealing they both sensed the huge news that she was pregnant. It was appropriate to only provide this information following the nuptials so that no one could ask them about her father. Rose and David were overjoyed to learn that they were truly ecstatic about her, and their joy made the occasion even more memorable. Happier, but as anticipated, Kate had towed her own pessimism as though she couldn't simply give that to Deborah joy without causing resentment. She began her remark by asking if Deborah was certain that she would have AA as a child. She mentioned how she may come to regret being a mother too soon without first relishing life as a married couple with. For several years, Justin's comments took. Deborah was taken aback when it seemed like Kate was expressing her own apologies or unsolved problems onto her that she was unable. To think that even during this happy time, Kate was unable to provide for her without making. She is doubting herself. Yet this Deborah didn't mince words this time. She was getting pregnant, and the imagined Kate attempting to minimize or obscure her joy and make things worse, maybe harming her child in the same way, forced her to defend herself in a manner that never had before. She reminded quietly, Kate, letting her know that she wasn't her never regret bringing a child into the world with a. She made it plain to the man she loved that no, regardless of the moment, she had now certainty about becoming a mommy because she had let Kate walk all over her for so long, analyzing her choices and coming to. She felt insignificant, but this time was different, and she refused to let her control or discredit her any longer, particularly with regard to her family. Kate then disclosed her actual sentiments. She said she was unable to think Deborah, her daughter, had consistently been regarded as the second greatest, the first to conceive and deliver she acknowledged the family's first grandchild, that she had always thought Rose would prevail. In case that wasn't enough, Kate continued by declare that she simply wasn't prepared to be a granny. She accused Deborah right away of attempting to damage her standing and social network by giving birth so quickly. Hearing her say after getting married, that felt like a slap across the face. She insulted her directly, but now her delight during her pregnancy was in some ways an harm to Kate's reputation. It was a startling demonstration of self-centeredness, even for she wasn't concerned about Deborah or Kate. Her future as a mother was limited to concerned about her appearance to her by that time. Deborah's pals had sufficient. She told Kate clearly that if she genuinely had that feeling, she wouldn't have any part she played in her child's life, that if she had a better reputation, more significant than being a mother who supports and grandma, after which she was formally prohibited from seeing her child, and that she would not be communicating with her. The discussion swiftly turned into a heated dispute, with strong feelings elevated on both sides. But ultimately, since then, Deborah has asked her to leave. Afterward, Kate had been mailing her several messages, intended to make her feel guilty about. She said she apologized for her outburst. She was simply telling the truth about how she perceived Deborah as being pregnancy-related hypersensitivity hormones, which she claimed to be her mother's. She was perfectly entitled to express her reservations. On her hasty marriage and pregnancy, Deborah, however, wasn't buying it, had at last defended herself, and I wasn't looking back. A week had passed. Considering the final update, Kate had no option but to retreat, Rose, and it seems that David had criticized her for being callous towards Deborah and advised her to disregard the situation for the first time. Kate appeared to have at last understood that Deborah was sincere about removing her from her life and realized she can longer put up with her poisonous behavior, especially regarding her child. Kate had apologized grudgingly and pledged not to be really pessimistic about the pregnancy, or Rose had a second marriage 3 days prior. Threw her a lovely baby shower. Everything was just how she had imagined. Naturally, I thought Kate was there. However, she appeared extremely anxious that Deborah observed that she continued to looking as though she were at the door, anticipating the arrival of something or someone. Then all changed when the doorbell rang. Altered Kate almost leapt off the couch and announced something to she had a surprise for everyone in the room. Deborah was unsure about what to anticipate, believed that might be a